Here is why modern Call of Duty Zombies has failed. Now, this whole video comes off of the heel of a tweet made by someone going by the name of Spooky Sal, which has a directly opposing opinion, and I'm going to read it out to you right now. Now, just a heads up, this tweet is quite long, so just bear with me because we are going to get into the thick of things when it comes to talking about this topic. Why is the zombies community so garbage now? Personally, I think it's largely due to the inability to let go. They want another Black Ops 1, another Black Ops 2, another Black Ops 3. They want the adventures of Primus and Ultimus to continue. They want the good old days to come back. The problem is, it will never go back to that. Nothing lasts forever. Everything must change eventually, and Zombies is no different. The mode had to evolve from the original World at War days because despite popular belief, that exact same formula wouldn't stand a chance by today's standards. Cold War Zombies, whether you like it or hate it, changed the mode forever and made it open to anyone. You no longer had to be cracked at zombies to be able to enjoy the game. Your average Joe could just pick it up and actually do fairly decent in their first match. To me, this evolution of Zombies is near perfect and fixes the horrible old meta of having to dedicate your entire time of learning every single secret inside of the map to be able to enjoy a large portion of the map's core features. The reason why I went off about Cold War is simply because it stands against everything the Zombies community, quote unquote, believes in. It's so far off what the original Black Ops game set up and how somewhat exclusive those maps were. Only the most hardcore players could really get into some of those maps due to how complex the game setup is. This casual audience joining in again seems to just tick them off for some reason. They were never able to let go of the Ether, 115, Richtofen, the Apothecans, or the Multiverse. And since they can't let go, they'll continue to sit in their own pool of hate and misery until the day the classic Zombies feel will come back. That day will never come. Right, so very strong words, clearly a very passionate person, and you know what? I respect that. I actually genuinely appreciate kind of different opinions to mine in the Zombies community, and I respect them, and I feel like it engages conversation, which is exactly what this video is all about. But god damn, we really got to pick this apart. So the first part about being unable to let go, I feel like it is relevant. It is true. In fact, we do very much cling to the past games, but I feel like I can totally justify why. Now, nostalgia is obviously a very, very strong emotion. It will allow us to kind of go back to games that are objectively worse than the games that we have nowadays and just love them for what they were because they were a part of our life. But at the same time, there are things about these classic games that were just better. You take a game like Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, and Black Ops 3, which are the examples that was used in this tweet, and immediately I can tell you, especially if you throw World at War into that mix, the things that those games did way better. We can talk about ambience, we can talk about the atmospheric music, the kind of sound effects they used, the weapon design, all of that stuff was far, far superior back then. And that is not just a small thing. For me personally, like ambient noise and that kind of stuff really contributes to atmosphere, and atmosphere is genuinely one of the main reasons I love COD Zombies. It gives a map personality, and speaking of maps with personality, I can tell you that all of these past games had very, very interesting locales for Zombies maps. You know, you take a game like Black Ops 1, for example, where we start in Kino Doto in a very kind of, you know, somewhat generic, you could argue, map, and then we go to the Pentagon, which is a radically different scenario, but still kind of a similar indoor environment. So then we go to a Russian Cosmodrome. Then we go to Call of the Dead with the gorgeous vistas that that has, and a completely different environment altogether, and then they throw us yet again into a complete U-turn with Shangri-La. And then guess what? Moon. Freaking Moon. And that kind of radical change in locale shifted into Black Ops 2, it shifted into Black Ops 3, like everything had its own identity. And that ties into the soul of a map, the soul of the game mode itself. I mean, look at Shadows of Evil and then the other maps in Black Ops 3 and how just completely different they are. And then look at the maps in Cold War and tell me that that wonderful sense of exploration and entering new environments and different experiences is the same. It's just not the same. In my opinion, besides Mauer de Toten, the Cold War maps had pretty much next to zero personality whatsoever. It all just felt like lifeless base after base. I mean, it's all well and good to praise the story. I mean, whether or not you like the story or not, I thought they actually did a pretty good job at portraying it. It was a pretty interesting story at the time. It was actually something that I was about to get invested in. But the reason why I couldn't invest myself in the story so much is just because the gameplay side of things was just lacking so hard. And even though the COD Zombie story is a very important part of what made the game mode so successful, the reality is the biggest thing was the gameplay. And part of what made the gameplay so successful, especially towards people like me, is the fact that the atmosphere in these old games completely consumed you. I'm gonna just play a comparison clip just to kind of get my point across here. So if you're one of the people that kind of appreciate these points I'm raising and these qualities in these older games, you're going to look at a game like Black Ops 1, World at War, Black Ops 2, Black Ops 3 and think, well, these did it way better, so I'm just going to go back to these. That's not being able to let go, but rather just kind of appreciating the qualities of the old games that are just not present in the new one, the things that drew you to the game mode in the first place. So let's move on to the point talking about the original cast and wanting the good old days to come back. Now, I like to think that most people who kind of, have an understanding on the situation with Primus and Ultimus, that they wouldn't actually want these characters to return. Maybe in the context of a remaster pack like Zombie Chronicles 2, or if there's like a standalone Zombies game now that Microsoft has taken over, that kind of stuff would make sense if you're reusing older lines. But in the case of making new lines and bringing Primus and Ultimus back, in my opinion, and pretty much most of the opinions of the people that I know, at least in my circle who appreciate zombies, all kind of agree that the fact that Tom Kane, the voice actor who plays Takeo, with him now being completely unable to do voice acting, unfortunately, it just wouldn't be right to bring these characters back and try and get a replacement to do Takeo. It just would feel wrong. And so to me, letting go of these characters is something that I'm totally okay with. There are other crews that were brought forward that actually were really, really fun to play with. I don't really know anyone that hates the Shadows of Evil crew, for example. I feel like most people assume just because the large majority of us didn't like the Chaos crew that we just hate the idea of anyone but the original 4, but it's just not true. It's just a storm, Dick. Sit down is one of the most iconic lines in COD Zombies history, and that wasn't done by the original 4. But talking about how it will never go back to the good old days is fair enough. The reality is it's quite unlikely. A lot of the appreciation we have for Call of Duty Zombies as a mode stems from being able to hop on with friends from school and things like that. And for the large majority of us, of course, our friends are busy now. Experiencing the good old days like we did back then is true. It's not going to happen because it was more than just a game. It was the social elements that came with it. But reliving the joy of the good old days is totally possible by going back to older games, appreciating remasters, or if we get a standalone game in the future. But the idea that the good old days will completely come back with future titles, with original content, I guess I can totally agree with the tweet in the sense that that just isn't going to happen. I mean, the hype levels might come back, the kind of, just excitement in general for the mode might return, but the glory days coming back in the sense that Zombies returns to exactly how we remember it is just unrealistic. But I feel like that isn't the problem. The fact that we're not going back to how things used to be isn't the problem. The problem is the game mode has evolved in a way that just isn't very functional, at least not for everyone. And this perfectly ties into the next point we're going to lean into here, where it was mentioned that whether you like or hate Cold War, it made it open to anyone. Now, this is a fair point, and I do agree with it. It did very much open the mode to the kind of newbies that might not have jumped in previously because of how hardcore it really was to try and get into. It was a very steep learning curve. This is something that Jason Blundell did talk about when he announced the different kind of difficulty modes available for Black Ops 4 when Black Ops 4 was being announced on stage. But here's the thing, the way Cold War Zombies was handled, whilst it did allow anyone to be able to get good at the game wasn't for everyone. Now, what I mean by that is the fact that you can argue all you want about how Cold War integrated new players, which is completely true, and you can then say, well, everyone's happy then. But the answer isn't that everyone's happy. The reason why that isn't the case is simply because the hardcore players were just ditched. It's not that the hardcore players were included with kind of trying to integrate a new audience. It was a simple case of choosing a new audience over appeasing the one that has been standing by the mode for so long. And let me elaborate on that. This doesn't apply to everyone. I know a lot of fans of Black Ops 1, Black Ops 2, even World at War who did actually genuinely like Cold War Zombies. And if that is the case, then totally cool. That's dope. In my opinion though, with how easy that freaking game actually is, when you leveled up all your perks and all your subclasses and all that stuff, the game just became so simple. To the point where, in combination with the earlier points I made about the lack of atmosphere and things like that, it just made me feel like I wasn't playing Treyarch Zombies anymore. It didn't feel like Treyarch Zombies. It just felt way too forgiving. And to me, it just felt like it evolved into the kind of zombies modes that we expect from the other development teams for COD, kind of like, Infinite Warfare zombies, for example. Now, don't get me wrong. I do appreciate simplicity in many ways. I like the fact Cold War scrapped consumables. I like the fact that buildables aren't everywhere and we don't have to spend half an hour just looking for parts. Those are the kind of changes that I personally really welcome as a fan of World at War and Black Ops 1. But what I'm talking about here is how the atmospheric soul is gone, and more so with this point in particular, the fact that the savage nature of the mode was completely removed. It didn't feel like the Treyarch Zombies I knew. And I just know some people are going to say, oh, well, Revelations was easy and all that kind of stuff, but let's be real. There was a freaking balance, man. If you didn't want to play an easy map, then just don't play an easy map. That was an option for you back then. You didn't have overpowered, tier 5 perks that just made everything a cakewalk. Sure, in the case of Black Ops 3, you had consumables, but I'm just going to cover my my own back by saying I didn't even use those. Now, change is good, innovation is good, but when it kind of abandons the very things, the very qualities that made the game mode successful in the first place, you can't help but just kind of think, what the actual f is going on? Yes, it was open to anyone, but not for everyone. And no, I'm not telling them that they should have chose us over integrating new players. The fact that new players got brought into the mode is actually a brilliant thing. The thing that actually bugs me though, and the point that I'm actually trying to make, is just how easy it would be to actually please both sides of this argument. And I've made a video about it. It's so simple. You look at multiplayer, you see that there's a core and a hardcore mode. That could have been so easily translated to zombies. The core mode would have been Cold War Zombies exactly as we knew it, whereas the hardcore mode would have reverted the game mode and all of its qualities back to the old days that we used to love so much. It would strip away all of the overpowered crutches. It would make the game mode way harder, way faster, and could even be done in a kind of way where there's like a dedicated hardcore Easter egg, similarly to that of, you know, how Sledgehammer handled Call of Duty World War II. But with the hardcore Easter egg, the steps are slightly different and are not hinted to you the same way as they were in Cold War, but more kind of like how they used to be back in the day, so that Easter egg hunts return to how they used to be. This way, what you have is literally both kinds of fans are appeased simply just by doing that. Sprinkle in some separate challenges, some separate rewards, so that the hardcore players feel like they can flex and the core players still feel like they have their own sense of accomplishment in regards to doing the things their way. And what you have is a pretty winning formula in my book. The only thing that would still, of course, be a problem is, you know, the kind of points I made earlier, yet again, about how the maps felt kind of bland and how there was a lack of atmosphere. Of course, this problem stems largely by how Activision has handled Call of Duty, and thus COD Zombies has been affected as a result. Of course, time constraints, these devs are burnt out. We all know the story. But from where I'm standing, as much sympathy as I have for the developers, I still kind of have to look at this objectively, and I have to kind of evaluate a game, in my opinion, for exactly what it is, not because of why it is. But like I said, this is my opinion. If you enjoy Cold War, trust me, I'm not attacking anyone, okay? I know a lot of people are very sensitive about this kind of thing. I'm not attacking Cold War Zombies fans. I'm just kind of standing the ground for the people who kind of feel like they just felt abandoned when it came to Cold War. So no, I wouldn't say it's the case that the hardcore fans are annoyed about new fans coming in. We want this game to succeed. We want this mode to thrive. And the reality is numbers count when it comes to, you know, kind of higher powers like Activision or Microsoft deciding how much time to invest in the mode itself. I mean, Lex, if you're watching this, I know you don't want me to mention that Vanguard exists, but Vanguard exists, alright? And that is the epitome of putting next to no time into something. I don't care. And without the growth in numbers for the mode, that was the path we were just going down indefinitely. Until, of course, Microsoft bought out Activision. We're yet to see how that pans out. I mean, if the mode of zombies became the biggest part of Call of Duty, it would probably get a standalone game. And that's what everyone wants, right? So we're not mad about that kind of thing. The thing that's bothered these hardcore players, including myself, is just simply the fact that it wasn't a matter of including everyone. It was a matter of choosing an entirely new direction that favored the newbie players and kind of shunned all the hardcore ones to one side. Now, you could argue they added a rampage inducer and they eventually patched it so it stems into the higher rounds as well. But let's be real, it's not the same thing at all. And it did also kind of feel like too little too late at the time. The one thing I will agree with on this tweet though is how toxic the community of zombies really is. It genuinely is a very toxic place. You can't have an opposing opinion. I am probably going to get hated on just for kind of voicing my stance on this tweet. And there are people who genuinely, like, they have a problem. Like, just chill out. It's just Twitter. It's just an opinion. Like, you don't have to get mad at everything. But that boils down to immaturity. Frankly, that's really nothing to do with the game, which is why I've been continuously reiterating throughout this video that I'm not coming after Cold War Zombies fans. This video is not targeted against these people. All I'm doing is just contributing my thoughts to this conversation. I'm not even coming after Spooky Sal, the author of this tweet. In fact, Spooky Sal clearly is a really talented person. I'm gonna just shout them out right now. The renders that this person makes are truly freaking incredible, and in fact, I'll link their Twitter down below if you want to go ahead and check them out. This is not a hostile video, and to be honest, I feel like it's quite sad that I even have to kind of state that, but that's a whole other conversation. But I feel like the real reason why Modern Zombies has failed is because it could have so easily appeased to everyone, and instead decides to shift into these entirely new directions, which almost is it just feels non-functional and incomparable to what made the game mode popular in the first place. And that is why, in my opinion, people have every right to miss the old days and kind of treat Modern Zombies as if it has failed. And people might get mad if you're someone that goes on Twitter and complains about the state of zombies currently. But here's the thing, if you're not vocal, you can never expect the changes you want to happen. And to anyone who counter argues by saying, I just don't want this toxicity on my timeline, then there is a very simple solution. It's called muting, unfollowing, and or blocking. That's it. But that is just my opinion, lads, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this kind of rant video. If you did, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll do more kind of random stuff like this. It's kind of fun to make, so do let me know. But I'll catch you guys in the next one, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.